Welcome to Insights with Cyber Leaders. I'm joined today by Ian Glover, President of CREST. Ian, thank you so much for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
Insights with Cyber Leaders is primarily focused about the individual, Ian. So if you don't mind, can you tell me, I know there's a lot to tell, but if you can, in summary about your career, where you started and how you got into starting CREST, and then we can go further.
Okay. So I've been in the industry for 40 years, which is a very frightening number for me now, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So the most exciting part of this really is to pass on some of this sort of insight in terms of where we've come from.
Yeah.
So I started my career working in a retail environment. So we were working for a publisher. It was their first ever computer system. I was their computer department.
Wow.
And we did stock control and payroll. So it's very interesting, quite a nice thing to do because I was responsible for everything associated with the systems. I tried to get an education at the same time, and so I was going to evening classes to learn more. And a job came up in the Ministry of Defence, so the UK Ministry of Defence, and they offered me to go to college at the same time as working. So I applied there, and I went to work for something called the Defence Operational Analysis Establishment. Fantastic place, and there I was a computer operator. So in some ways I took a backward step to try to go forward, but they certainly sponsored me through college. I used to work shifts. And a fantastic thing that gave me was the opportunity to probably do coding for 10 hours a day. So as an operator, much more than the programs at the time, I had unlimited access to mainframe systems, a really, really joyous thing. So I used to mend people's code all the time as an operator. I used to certainly look at their coding techniques and improve the performance of their systems. And used to do quite a lot more than a sort of traditional operator would do.
Wow. Okay.
From there, I then decided I was going to leave the Ministry of Defence. I saved a lot of money working overtime and doing other things, and thought I'd go away and get a degree. At that point, the Ministry of Defence said, "Have you thought about getting a bursary?" I'd never heard of a bursary before in my life, and they said, "We'll go for an interview in London." 10 minutes later, I had a bursary, and they were going to pay me to go to university. So,
excellent.
So a huge contribution. And I think that massive contribution that they've made is some of the reason why I try and give so much back to people in the industry. So I did one of the first computer science degrees, really one of the first ones that didn't have a mathematical bent to it because I didn't have A-level maths, so it's much more of a business orientated degree course. And I used to do 6 months in, 6 months out working for the Ministry of Defence. At that point I started to build artificial intelligence systems. So I was building...
Stop 1 second, sorry. At that point,
yes.
You were building AI systems already?
Yeah, I really wanted to call them augmented rather than artificial because I felt that it was an augmentation to the intelligence of the individual, but we were building AI systems early in the 80s.
Wow.
Really. So the first systems that I worked on were the identification of unexploded bombs. So we were looking for the different attributes associated with bombs to allow the bomb disposal people to identify what they were and to disarm them safely.
Okay.
We then went on to using artificial intelligence for missile recognition as well, which was quite good fun.
Wow.
And so there was a whole raft of different things we were using, everything from statistical models for battle simulations through to specific environments using artificial, or I prefer augmented intelligence.
Yeah.
At that point, we were trying to move into the modelling side a lot more in terms of using computers in a much more intelligent way, I would suggest. And so the interface between the very early microcomputer systems and mainframes was something, again, I was working on because we wanted a graphical interface with a lot of the work that we were doing. I finished my degree, came back and started working again for the Ministry of Defence for a short period of time. And as the government sort of requires, they suggested I go and work for a different department. So I went to work for an organisation called CCTA, which used to be the Central Computer and Telecommunications Agency.
Okay.
Interesting, if you read any books about the US and the advent of what we were doing in technology in the UK, CCTA was the equivalent of NIST and some of the other areas. Really fantastic place.
Okay.
They developed prompt for project management. They developed prints ultimately. SSADM. And I was working on secure operating systems design. I went to work there specifically again for the artificial intelligence, but I was using it in a slightly different way. And then I worked on some other things as well, like, for example, the first ever NETOP computer that was used in government. Again,
Wow.
Right concept, wrong term, which I think is a really interesting thing.
What was it called again?
NETOP.
NETOP,
Yeah,
right.
it was called the Liberator, and it was
Okay.
basically a word processing and printing facility. It
Right.
was 4-line, really very good. If anybody's got one, I'd really like to buy one. So
I'd like to see one.
I haven't got one in
Okay,
my
I've got to Google that.
in my loft. I'd really like one. So I did some work looking at that, but really I was trying to build the relationships of understanding these modelling type techniques. And so they asked me to have a look at risk analysis, so cyber security or information system security risk analysis. And what I did was I took the concept of artificial intelligence, so we had a knowledge base of controls and threats and vulnerabilities, and you had an inference engine to allow that to be manipulated. And we developed something called CRAM, which was quite widely adopted in the UK.
Yes.
Ultimately, we put too much functionality in it, as often you used to do with software products. But the concept behind it, in terms of having threats, vulnerabilities, and then having some sort of asset register that you want to apply controls to, I still think is quite a valid technique. And certainly with some of the things like countermeasure prioritisation, I still think some of the algorithms we built at that time were quite relevant.
Is CRAM still operational?
Yes, some people still operate the license.
Nice.
So
that's interesting.
I'm
I don't know.
I'm not sure if it's still in maintenance, but I do know people that are still using it.
Right.
But we also work with NIST on their frameworks, and we work with people like Los Alamos on their vulnerability assessment process, building generalised risk management models on an international stage. Really a very exciting time. At that point, I started to do what I would class as consultancy for government departments. So we were advising government departments on their security arrangements from a technology perspective.
Right.
And I got promoted quite quickly through the civil service. And the next job they were going to give me was policy. So not really great on policy, and so I went in to see the permanent Under Secretary, not realising quite how senior he was in the UK government.
Right.
I knocked on his door, I remember it very well. I walked 10 yards into his office and then spoke to him about what I should do with my career, whether or not I should stay in the civil service or leave. And he suggested to me that I should leave because I could probably provide as much benefit from the outside as I could from the inside.
Okay.
Wasn't quite the advice I was expecting, but I took it. And interestingly, he left about 2 months before I did. So he'd obviously had a decision, and it might be slightly biased in terms of where he was. From that, I went to work for Ernst & Young, helped establish their first cyber security or technology security practice. Worked very closely with their audit group, which was quite an unusual situation at that time. I had a lot of the other big four and some of the other technology companies trying to headhunt me on a regular basis, which was always very nice for your ego, but it makes you think quite carefully about why they would want you. And so I made the decision to step out on my own. I thought, if all these other people want me, then obviously there's an opportunity for me to move out. So at the bottom of a recession was a good time to start a business.
When was this?
That would have been mid-80s.
Okay.
Yeah. We set up an organisation called Insight Consulting. So that was myself and two other partners, a gentleman called Kelvin Lack and Simon Marvel. We took that from start-up to around about 150 consultants, specialising in technical information security, so penetration testing, security architectural design, specific architectural work for the government through the CLASS scheme at the time. We had a significant penetration testing practice, providing services to government under the check scheme, but also had business continuity management, identity and access management, and a number of other policy related things, really with the advent of things like 27001. In addition to direct consultancy, we had a training organisation as well, which used to do quite well, and also I had a specialist recruitment organisation to both fulfil the requirements of the clients, but also to try and find people.
Wow.
We decided to sell that business, and I sold it to Siemens. We sold it to Siemens in Germany. And
so that's where Siemens Insights.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
And then they took that business and then put it in a couple of the UK environments. So I was on the board of Siemens for EMEA, for Siemens Communications for EMEA, for about 5 years after they purchased the organisation.
Right.
Quite an interesting time trying to merge a professional services firm into a set of product-related companies. Really quite an exciting opportunity, I think, at that point. And certainly I learned an awful lot about that type of integration. And I think what that gave me was the opportunity to understand startup, understand the workings of government, understanding the bureaucracy associated with large technology-based organisations, and some of the difficulties associated with working on the board. So it was quite an exciting time. I decided to retire. I retired for 5 days, which was probably 3 days longer than my wife thought I'd manage. We'd already been working to establish CREST as being the organisation that would be accrediting organisations and certifying individuals in particularly penetration testing.
After it sold Insight?
Yeah, well, after I was on the board of
Siemens. So right.
The check scheme was developed by the UK government as an IT health check, penetration testing on behalf of government departments.
Right.
The problem with that is if we wanted to apply those sorts of good techniques to the financial services market, for example, then some of the limitations in terms of what they could do for organisations was quite profound. So you had to use a UK domiciled organisation, you had to use staff that were capable of carrying a UK government clearance. That would be inappropriate from an ITT perspective for say a bank or a financial services or a pharmaceutical organisation. The government used to do their own qualifications at that time, but they were really struggling with the resources of that. And so what we did was we set CREST up to do the accreditation of companies for the private sector, feeding into the UK government, and then the certification of individuals. So that's how my sort of journey came to that.
CREST. And you're still with CREST.
I am.
Yeah, president of CREST. And I guess for the viewers who don't know, many people do know of CREST, what exactly is CREST and what are its objectives?
Well, really, and probably most importantly, we're a not-for-profit organisation. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to professionalise the technical security industry. I mean, that's one of our primary objectives, by providing consistency, growth, and standards. Those are really the three pillars that we're working to. So we accredit companies that provide penetration testing services, threat intelligence service providers, and people that provide cyber-related incident response. Underneath that, we have a number of other schemes that we operate, but really under those categories. So in the UK, we're an accreditation authority for Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, right at the bottom level of the cyber hygiene. And then at the top level, we operate something called STAR, which is a situational or simulated targeted attack and response program, where we combine threat intelligence and penetration testing at really the critical national infrastructure end of the marketplace. And then a deviation of that, or a derivation of that, is the CBEST scheme that's operated by the UK Bank of England. Which is looking at intelligence-led penetration testing for critical parts of the UK financial services. We've extended that, and we're doing the same service now on behalf of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, Singaporean Monetary Authority. We're talking to Bank Negara in Malaysia. So Singapore and Southeast Asia is beginning to be very strong in a consistent market. And then we're also applying things in other regions. There's an awful lot of financial services regulators interested. And then from a UK perspective, we're working with the telecommunications agencies, civil nuclear, again to look at the critical national infrastructure elements of providing additional levels of assurance.
So can I take this on the CREST question? So we get asked as to why only CREST. So when we talk about CREST, many customers ask us, why should we use CREST? What's the message that I guess you want to give to them that we have our response similar to what you say, but is there something that says this is why you should use CREST?
So you wouldn't necessarily use CREST. What you do is you'd use a CREST member company. So a company that's gone through an external accreditation. We ask very hard questions. And we would suggest you use qualified individuals, and again that would normally be under a CREST scheme. From my perspective as a not-for-profit, if there was equivalencies in other regions, we would be more than happy to grant equivalencies. There is no reason why I need to chase around the world to try to do this. The difficulty we have is finding a not-for-profit organisation, because that's very important, an independent not-for-profit. That does both the accreditation of the companies and the certification of the individuals. From a buying community perspective, what that means is you're buying the services from a trusted organisation that's had a third-party review associated with the detailed application of how it runs penetration testing and threat intel and cyber incident response. And those individual companies sign up to a code of conduct. From the personal side of things, then we're using people at a professional level. So our qualifications come in at around about 2,500 hours after a good master's degree, or relevant technology-based experience.
Yeah.
So we're not looking at somebody just entering the marketplace. We're looking at a skilled professional,
An experienced
person.
professional.
And next
Yeah.
level up is around about 6,000 hours, 3 years worth of regular and frequent experience. And then at a certified level, it's around about 10,000 hours.
10,000 hours.
Then, for example, for the Bank of England, there are some additional requirements over and above that in
Yeah.
terms of specific sector experience. We also don't have the concept of professional development. Interesting, I'm looking at mastery at the moment. We currently think that an 80% passes, 20% fail, so we'd like to concentrate people on getting a full understanding of all the areas they should understand. But we retest everybody here every 3 years.
Okay.
So the whole concept behind that is because we're in such a
Moving, yeah.
fast evolving position,
Yeah.
the individuals have to be tested every 3 years.
Okay.
The individual also signs up to a code of conduct. What that means for the buying community is if they are unhappy with the services that are provided, then they can mount a complaint against the organisation. We will investigate it, we have investigated, and we take action.
Excellent.
Ultimately, our action could be if we remove an organisation from our register. In the UK, that means they won't do work for the Bank of England or the Financial Services Authority. That would probably take them out of top tier UK financial services. We have a back-to-back agreement with the NCSC in the UK, so GCHQ.
Yeah, GCHQ. Yeah.
So they'll probably get removed from the check scheme. Ultimately, we'll gradually move into telecommunications and other areas of critical national infrastructure. They won't be able to do that work.
So they have to maintain a high standard.
They do, yeah.
Which basically
And the stick is quite draconian.
strong. Yeah.
And the individuals sign up to that as well. So they have to work to the policies, processes, and procedures of the companies. Otherwise, again, a removal from the register would exclude them from doing an awful lot of that type of work. I don't want this ever to be a mandation necessarily in that area, because I think that might make us a bit lazy. But from a buying community perspective, then you're buying the services, as I've said, from a trusted organisation, and then the individuals have to demonstrate their skill, knowledgeable and competent to actually do this work. We have more non-disclosure agreements out with companies that would like to be CREST members than we have CREST members.
Wow.
If it was a for-profit organisation, we would lower the bar and introduce many more people in.
So, on this note, I wanted to just move on into skills and people who want to join this profession. Not only just penetration testing, but maybe technology as such. And someone looking at this, they don't have the experience. What's your kind of summary advice to them? What should they do?
So if I stand back a little bit about the professionalisation and then move into that, because then it will be a logical flow, I think.
Yeah.
We also run the cyber incident response. So again, we accredit companies and we certify individuals in that space. We run the accreditation, for example, on behalf of the NSA in the States, and we're looking at doing some work with them on vulnerability assessment tools and products as well, which is quite interesting. The reason for saying that is that the maturity of a career pathway for somebody in penetration testing is not too bad. There is a pathway that you understand where you're going to go through.
Yeah.
On the cyber incident response, it's not quite as mature, but we're working to develop that in a much more structured way.
Okay.
We have got the 10,000 hour exams, we have got the 6,000 hour exams, and we're developing the 2,500 hour exams, and they're quite meaningful in the marketplace.
Right.
If you look at the other areas of accreditation, like threat intelligence, for example, then we have the top end. What we don't have is a funnel to bring people through. So if you think about that as being a career pathway in accountancy or audit or even medicine, I don't like to do those sorts of comparisons, but those numbers are very typical in those sorts of professions.
Yeah.
But what they do is they provide a much greater hopper at the bottom to encourage people in. So if a young person was really interested in moving into this space, then if they went home and spoke to their parents, the manifestation of a job in this technical security area is probably going to be a hacker. If you then go and tell your parents that you want to be a hacker, they're unlikely to go and buy you new kit, and they might even take it away from you.
Take it away, yeah.
If you go and see your careers advisors at school, then they'll either ask you to look at the school network, because that's obviously not going to run very well, or they'll take your credentials away. So it's very difficult for people to articulate what they want to be. And so we've done quite a lot of work in terms of providing things like day in the life videos, things like this, really, to describe that this is a profession. There are real professional people doing it. There's a career pathway. There are ethical codes. All of those sorts of activities, which I really think help to demonstrate
Yeah.
to both the individuals that there's a pathway there, but also to the influencers that are likely to influence people's careers and allow them to go into certain industries.
Totally.
From a CREST perspective, we have a 3-tier program to try to work to introduce more people into the industry. We have a short, medium and long.
Okay.
So in terms of our short-term plans, we're trying to work with the training organisations. We don't provide training because there's a potential conflict of interest between certification and training. We don't want somebody to go on a training course and expect them to be able to pass.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing there is we're working with training organisations and academia to look at conversion courses.
Okay.
To take people with good computer science backgrounds or good mathematical backgrounds or good STEM related backgrounds and bring them into technical security. Interestingly, the last 3 young people I've brought into the industry have been in threat intel, and they've come from politics, history and international history. So that analytical side of things is so
crucial.
Is quite important as well.
Yes.
So we're trying to suggest that cyber is broader than just the technology.
Yeah.
But you can tell from the conversation you're having with me, I quite like the tech.
No, totally. Same here, but yeah.
So the short term, I think, is to try and identify talent, move people into the industry and allow them to convert from other industries and allow them to convert from other disciplines. The medium term is working with the universities. So we run an academic partner program. A lot of other people do. I think ours is slightly different because we don't really want the people until they've been in the industry for a couple of years afterwards. So we don't chase the people in that way.
Yeah.
But what we do try and provide is opportunities for internship, work placements. We have about 160 hours worth of professional content that's available free to anybody to download.
On the website.
On the website.
Yeah.
And we have a number of other things like career guides and things in universities that we are utilising. So that idea about trying to provide some structure for people to come in that route, I think is a very good idea. We need to encourage more organisations to take on young people, otherwise the skills gap, the lack of people coming in, I think will continue to
widen. Yeah.
But what we're also doing there is we're working in the UK and in the US looking at higher apprenticeship programs as well. So the concept of a level 4, so an 18-year-old going through and getting a level 4 apprenticeship program after a couple of years, I think is really very good. I think they gain really good experience and at the same time they balance their work and study lifestyle. And now we're starting to work, or we've almost finished the definition of the level 6, which is a degree level higher apprenticeship program. That's got an awful lot of international interest. So the idea of establishing a technical syllabus that we can gradually introduce in terms of moving that process forward, I think is a really good idea. I think we need to overcome some of the stigmas associated with apprenticeships. People still think they're white-coated people or bricklayers.
No,
but I think for the future and the way that our educational system currently works, I think that balance of coming up with no debt, coming out with good work experience skills and coming out with a good academic background is fantastic. By the time you're 22, you will be earning quite a lot of money with a fantastic career ahead of you. And then the long term is we're working with schools. So in the UK and in the US, there's things like Cybersecurity Challenge and other things that really go out hunting for talent.
Correct.
Which I think is quite a good thing to do, but I also think we need to farm. So in that context, what I'm actually saying is we need to educate people that there is a career pathway here.
In cyber.
So what we're doing there is we have career guides for 14 to 16 year olds. We've worked with some of the NSA material in terms of some of their quiz books and things like that we're introducing into an international market.
Excellent.
And we have something called Digital Defenders, which is something we're organising to go and try and encourage people that there's a career pathway there. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of other initiatives going on to encourage people once you've made them aware, but that career pathway element is really important to us.
Ian, thank you for all this, amazing information, and all the viewers are going to listen in. I think are going to find this really, really insightful and informative. One thing clear is that there's passion, right? That you obviously have, taken throughout the career and started CREST. But I wanted to touch on diversity. Can you fill me in on, I know there's several different topics in the diversity umbrella. So what are your thoughts on that?
Is really interesting. I'm really quite an advocate of considering diversity. I think what we have to do is to look at diversity in its broadest sense first. So I think we're actually, from a technology security perspective, quite a diverse group.
Yeah.
We have people from different educational backgrounds. We have certainly significantly different personality traits associated with it. We have people from different religious and ethnical backgrounds. And so that balance in terms of being very inclusive and really working together with people, I think is something we've done very well. I think if you look at some of the elements we're not doing quite as well, then our gender diversity is certainly something that we have some issues with. Now, we have to address that in a very careful way. We have pulled together a number of the different women's working groups, women in technology, women in science and engineering, women in cyber, some of the specific working groups by some of the big four accountancy firms, the British Computer Society and some of the international ones from the States, to pull them together to try to look at the material they've got. I think our conclusion on this is that a lot of the material that's available is actually saying that we have a problem because we haven't got enough women. That's an obvious statement to make, but that doesn't encourage people in. That says if you come, you're going to be a minority, which in actual fact I don't agree with. Also, we have a suggestion that women will bring a softer side and a more better negotiating side. The women that I work with in this industry are forthright, strong, and technology based.
Exactly.
Completely. I mean, it's a real joy to work with people that are enthusiastic, and I don't really mind where they come from or what they do. That enthusiasm has to come through. And so what we're trying to do is to look at it from a marketing perspective, and I think it's a marketing problem. So what we're trying to do is to suggest that it's a really good place to come and work.
Yes.
It's a friendly place. We're making a positive contribution to society. There is a good career pathways. You can take career breaks. There's flexibility in terms of how you would work. And it's a really exciting, challenging place to be. And it's the ultimate game, really. And that's very appealing. But what we need to do is to get that message out on a consistent basis.
Well, hopefully this is one way of getting that message out, because I agree with you. I think there's too much focus on women will bring in the soft side. But in my experience, as much as yours, I think the women I know who are in cyber, they're very forthright. They know what they want and they know what they want to deliver.
Absolutely.
Neurodiversity, we discussed before we started the recording. And I know you have very strong views on that in terms of how we can get people, talking on the neurodiversity angle. How do we bring them in?
So neurodiversity is quite an interesting subject. It covers everything from dyslexia through to autism. So if you look at those sorts of traits of individuals, we certainly within the technology-based industry, particularly in the penetration testing and intrusion analysis, we have people that are definitely on the autistic scale.
Spectrum.
Now, whether or not they are actually specified as being on the scale or whether or not they just are, I think is quite an interesting concept. But what we're trying to do is to work with organisations to support how people could enter the industry. So we're doing some work with IAC at the moment, the Information Assurance Advisory Council, looking at people with autism. And they're looking at it from the perspective of how can employers work better to include those sorts of individuals into their workforce. And then we're doing the work to try to support the individuals in terms of their ability to answer their multiple choice questions, complete their application forms, how they prepare and how they can actually perform better at interview. And we're trying to work with them to encourage more people into those areas. They bring a huge amount of opportunity.
Unbelievable.
That convergence and that eye for detail, as well as having huge imagination, is really what we need in this particular industry. So the neurodiversity aspects to us is a really important consideration.
So I guess anyone who's looking at this interview and viewing this, if you know anyone with autism, get in touch and encourage them to look at the cybersecurity industry.
Yeah, and certainly get them to some of our challenges, look at the career pathways and talk to us, really. And we're very open. There are a number of other traits associated with people with certain neurodiversity issues. And some of those are really positive, as we described, but some of them are very negative, because some of those can be very vulnerable people. And some of those are being potentially targeted by serious organised crime and being groomed into cyber-related criminal activity. The criminals break down their normal social interaction, and then they try to do persuaded techniques to actually suggest to them that this is a good thing to do and it's a correct course of action.
Wow.
And what we're trying to do is to identify those, and using similar techniques as they use for people groomed into sex or groomed into even terrorism.
Right.
We're trying to look at intervention points to stop young people going into
Going down the
cybercrime.
wrong way. Yeah.
For me, that has two really positive attributes associated with it. The first is that it reduces the threat, and there's very little that we can do to reduce the threat,
Yep.
because we'll have less people going into crime.
Yeah.
And then obviously there is an opportunity there, because you've got enthusiastic, young, bright
Talented people.
that
Yeah.
we can encourage into the industry. But the earlier the intervention points, the better and more effective we can be as an industry. And working with people like the National Crime Agency and some of the people from Metropolitan Police,
Yeah.
there's a huge amount of work going in there. And I think on an international stage we should be pulling together more of these initiatives to understand that we can provide intervention points in this space, and there is an opportunity for us to do something really positive for society.
No, definitely. We at Cyber Management Alliance fully behind you. Totally supporting you in the great stuff you're doing. I know we can carry on. I think we're going to have to do a take 2 sometime in the future. But Ian Glover, thank you for now.
That's
Thank you
always
so
a
much.
pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.